today, as we mentioned earlier. And we can thank Lisa Thomas, who is on our board for putting this panel together and bringing these wonderful ladies together. I'm excited. You thought this morning's panel was fun. I think these guys are going to put them to shame. They've already turned the man cave into a she shed for dinner. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, and I'm going to let Lisa introduce the rest of the panel to all of you. So enjoy.
Yes, I'm very excited about this panel. I had the opportunity to meet Bonni at an event, and we just hit it off immediately. And just the energy and just the enthusiasm for her nonprofit and meeting some of the other ladies, they're just amazing. And it just, we have such an opportunity in this county. We've got some amazing leaders, and so sort of the purpose of this panel today is to certainly teach you about the nonprofits themselves, but really about the backside of what it's like to run a nonprofit. And each of these amazing ladies are incredibly successful in what they do. So I'm going to just give a brief overview and then let them each talk about sort of what the mission of their organization is. First, we have Brateil Aghasi with WISEPlace. Brateil has led the organization since 2018. They have as their mission to lead the effort of ending homelessness for unaccompanied women through housing solutions and empowering wraparound services. Next, we have Claudia Bonilla Keller with Second Harvest Food Bank. Claudia has been with the organization since January 2020 and CEO since 2022. Their mission is to provide dignified, equitable, and consistent access to nutritious food, creating a foundation for community health. Last year, they gave away 36 million pounds of food. Next, we've got Bonni Pomush with Working Wardrobes. She's been CEO, second ever CEO of the organization, and she joined in 2022. And their mission is to help men, women, youth, and veterans to overcome difficult challenges so they can achieve the dignity of work and the power of a paycheck. And last but not least is Olin, who founded Charitable Ventures in 2007 with the mission to help strengthen and sustain the nonprofit sector. So with that, I'm going to go down the line and let you guys talk a little bit more about what your mission is for your organization.
Sure, thank you. Hi everybody, thank you for letting us into the man cave. We feel so honored. We've already given ourselves a tour and looked at all the things we weren't supposed to look at.
Checking your bag on the way out. So you can't unsee it either.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Brateil Aghasi, and I'm honored to be the CEO of WISEPlace. This is my 6th year leading the organization. And we essentially stand in the gap of services. And what I mean by that is we are specifically focused on affordable housing, shelter, emergency services for unaccompanied women. And the reason we focus on unaccompanied women is because 1 in every 3 homeless adults is an unaccompanied woman. And with all the amazing nonprofits in Orange County, most of them are focused on women with children. And so when you are a female who does not have children, or you're a senior who does not have children with you that are dependents, that is the one group of homeless individuals where homelessness is increasing rapidly, far more than any other population in our community and communities nationwide. And so we're really proud to stand in the gap. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Claudia. It's a pleasure to meet you all. So when I tell people I run a food bank in Orange County, there's always a chuckle, right? In Orange County, really? In one of the wealthiest counties and one of the richest states in one of the most resourced countries on the planet of the earth, before the pandemic, there was 250,000 food insecure people in this county. At the height of COVID-19 in July of 2020, we were feeding 650,000 people, and we had lines as long as 6,000 long at the Honda Center, if you happen to catch that when you were home watching TV for 2 years. Now that the pandemic is over, I think people think, well, people are working, the economy's back, and all that is true. But today we continue to serve 400,000 people on average each month through our pantry system of 300 partners, schools, churches, soup kitchens, and senior apartment complexes. So food insecurity is real in our county. We take it a step further and we know that we're not addressing hunger in the kind of world lens, right? We're addressing food insecurity and, more importantly, nutritional insecurity. So we've refined our mission to make sure that we're delivering the healthiest food possible to those most in need here in Orange County. And every month we buy milk, eggs, lean protein, and today we operate a 40-acre farm off of Irvine Boulevard in partnership with the University of California to make sure that those with the worst health outcomes have some of the most nutrient-dense, healthiest food on the planet.
I'm so glad you are doing what you're doing. So good, so good. My name is Bonnie. I serve as the CEO of Working Wardrobes, and we help over 5,000 people every year overcome all sorts of barriers to gainful employment. And we cannot do that work alone. Like you were mentioning your partner agencies, we partner with over 185 other agencies who are really good at what they do so that we can do what we're really good at, which is a lot of skill building. We identify an individualized employment plan for every person we work with, and in an environment of the utmost dignity, we identify where are they at, where are they headed, and sometimes we have to discover where we're headed together. And then we literally chart a course over anything that is in that person's way of achieving that goal. Our desired outcome of gainful employment is really intentional because we're not looking to just get a job. We are looking for steady paychecks and a safe environment where people can contribute of themselves, their unique talents and abilities. It's an honor to do this work with you ladies.
God, you guys are so impressive. I'm the stealth nonprofit. You may not have heard of Charitable Ventures, but I'm Anna Olin. I'm the CEO and founder of Charitable Ventures. Before that, I ran the Olin Group, which is a consultancy for nonprofits and foundations. And so our mission is a little different. I'm glad you invited me here on the day about business because we're about the business of change. What does that mean? It means that all of these missions are our mission. We have an incubator. It's got 61 projects in it right now. And you know, the joy of my heart is to see solutions coming out of the community, because that's where solutions really make sense. And what we do is put our shoulder to it, and we help those solutions turn into social sector businesses that can actually affect change. So I like to say I am in the business of change. It's ugly, it's sweaty, it's bloody. We could talk a little bit more about how nonprofits run, how they're capitalized, but it's business. And change is hard. And even if it's positive change, nobody likes to change. So it's a hard industry to be in, and all these ladies are smiling. I try and smile too, but it's
Your closet smile.
I'm closet. This is my pain smile. Hi, everything's fine. So that's what Charitable Ventures do. So we have a incubator. We still have a consultancy. I can talk about my merger later. And during COVID, we tripled in size. Because we were well positioned to help push out COVID relief funding. So and we hadn't done it before. I remember I sent my staff home on March 16th, and March 20th we were up and running getting donations for COVID. And since 2020 we have raised and distributed $30 million for individuals and small businesses and nonprofits. So all of us, Orange County has a fantastic reputation, and it is deserved, and there's a lot of wealth here. And there's a lot of diversity and a lot of challenges and a lot of poverty that goes unseen. So that's the privilege to work with these ladies and other community partners, but then to identify solutions and then go after it. So that is Charitable Ventures.
Absolutely. It's so interesting, and you have such similarities, but then also differences. So I would love to know what your business model is that has helped kind of chart you on this path of success, and maybe we start with you since you have such sort of a unique model, and then I would love to know sort of how you cross over, but then how you're really unique and how you made your mark.
Yeah, wow, hard question. We're a little strange as a nonprofit. I think nonprofits have a lot of options for revenue. My nonprofit is a social enterprise. We earn our income. So we get contracts, direct work, we do fee for service, and our projects will raise money philanthropically, they'll fundraise, and then the incubator takes a percentage of that. So I would say about 85 to 90% of my annual budget, which is about 20 to 25 million a year, comes through fee for service. And I feel so blessed because of that, because when you are earning your money, that money is unrestricted. Nonprofit business models tend to be reliant on government funding or philanthropy that can be restricted dollars, and that makes running a business harder. But for our organization, we have contracts, we offer services. It's direct B2B transaction for the most part. I am getting pressure from my board to engage more philanthropy because we are a little bit of a secret in Orange County, and they want us to get the word out to the foundation community that we do what we do. And I'm a horrible fundraiser, so I will call Bonni and I will say, how does one do this thing? And I've been in the industry since 2002, and I have never been a fundraiser, even though the nonprofits primarily exist on philanthropy and donations and the heart of community members that want to do good in the world. So I love my business model, but I'm also need to stretch and tap into that kind of philanthropic model. So that's the CV model.
Well, I shared with you the problem we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to help people help themselves. And I think that it's an incredible dynamic that happens when you are solving this particular problem, because the industries and the ways that people can support it are countless. So here's how our business model works. We have 3 funding sources. One is what you just identified, fundraising. Individuals and corporations are contributing sponsorships and gifts, obvious. Second place is what we refer to as contracted services, and that is the fee-for-service model, in the sense that we are like a vendor of the state, the city, the county, whomever, and we receive reimbursement for the services that we provide to the clients. Then the third funding source is our social enterprise. And that I have to share with you a little bit of the genesis, because I think it also helps make the rest of the service part of our work make sense. So, sidetrack, coming back. Our clients, I shared with you, they have an individualized employment plan. They start where they are. We map a course over these barriers. And at a certain point, their resume is updated, they're interview ready, and our sort of signature service is that we provide them with a success suit. They come in for this one-on-one personalized styling appointment, and they don't leave until their shoulders are thrown back, heads held high, confidence is on the way. And then we wrap it in tissue and put it in a South Coast Plaza gift bag, because I told you we treat everybody and everything with dignity. So when that's part of the way you deliver service, you need a lot of clothes. And so when we began services in 1990, there was the first need was we need a lot of clothes to be able to do this mission. Well, then our founder said, I have so many clothes, what do I do with them? And she said, I could sell them, and that would help me raise money to serve more clients. And so our social enterprise is that we have several retail stores. They are called The Hanger. There's one right here in Costa Mesa, which is awesome. Another one in Garden Grove, just reset it, very hip model. And our ladies only high-end boutique in Laguna Niguel. So if you are looking for the Valentino or Givenchy of your life, that's the place to go. So that social enterprise is our third funding source, and it's kind of amazing because I can't tell you also how many clients have come in shopping and become aware of our services, similar to people who are shopping who want to make that environmental, value action of not shopping in a new environment, but getting something that is gently loved. The last piece of this I mentioned, which is how so many people can help with this mission, right? So our business model is also completely dependent on over 3,000 individuals like you volunteering every year. We only have a staff of 40 people, but we have 3,000 who help us deliver the mission. And the way that they do that is all over. They are helping in our stores, running point of sale and cashiering. They are getting pallets of brand new clothes donated from corporations that are not wanting to count that in their inventory. They are helping coach our clients and practice those mock interviews. They are hiring our clients. I'm giving you just a few examples, but there are so many ways where people can share their intellectual property, their time, their expertise, a workshop, and that is literally baked into how we do business.
The stores are awesome. I just want to say that. My New Year's resolution is not to buy any new clothes, which my partner thought that was super cool. Keyword being new. Just saying. If there's a workaround, I can find it. So food banking, right? Food banking's been around for over 40 years, close to 50 years, and it was founded on a very simple premise. We have leftover food in communities. That leftover food should go to feed those that are hungry or experiencing food insecurity. I've done a similar kind of explaining our business model to European graduate students, and they look at me like, wow, that's interesting, right? Food banking is a very American model for one reason: excess, affluence, right? Hunger is prevalent in this country not because of a supply problem, it's an access problem. We waste 40% of the food that we produce in this country. So food banks came in to fill the void and be the connector, right? If you learn nothing else from me this afternoon, I'm going to teach you the difference between a food bank and a food pantry, because a lot of people use the terms interchangeably, right? A food pantry, of which we work with about 300, can be as small as a closet, can be the size of this room, or can be the size of a small auditorium, and they can have various models. They can distribute food every day from 8 to 5, they can be a mobile setup, they can be open a few days a week, 2 hours a day, it runs the gamut. Our food bank, and we are one of 2 food banks in this county, we have a 120,000 square foot facility in the Great Park in Irvine. We have 25 vehicles that range from a pickup truck to a 53-foot refrigerated truck. I hope I'm giving you the kind of the scope of our business. If you think of Ralph's or Albertsons, our pantries are our supermarkets, and we are the distribution center. We have one of the largest cold storage refrigerators in Southern California at 16,000 square feet. So when it gets hot in the summer, if you're in Irvine, you want to come chill out in 41 degrees, come knock on our door. So we raise funds and we raise food. And we get food from 4 major sources: the government, manufacturers of food, donated food from folks, grocery rescue, which means that we have over 900 pickups from Ralph's, Albertsons, Northgate, Costco, you name it. We send staff and volunteers to pick up food every single week that goes directly to our pantries. And I mentioned our 5th source of food, that is our farm in Irvine that has produced 5 million pounds of produce in the last 2 years. A lot of people ask, well, how do you know if people are hungry? Do you make them prove? Is it means tested? And 98% of that answer is no. If you are willing to come to a food pantry and pick up food that sometimes you don't have the choice of, or you are told you get 1 milk, 1 eggs, I'm pretty sure you're food insecure. We do everything that we can to make the experience dignified. I love that you use that word. The stigma around food security, even today, 4 years after COVID, remains huge. We will not stock food that it's beyond its life, no wilted produce, no dented cans, because that is not dignified. And as I mentioned, we are hyper-focused on nutrition and providing the best food that we can. That came about for 2 reasons during COVID. We got the funding during COVID because we were one of the few nonprofits, or one of the few sectors that saw a huge intake of money during the pandemic because of the visibility of hunger and food insecurity. But more so because my predecessor and I went to a pantry in Santa Ana and listened to a mom walk out and say, I got lucky today. I got a dozen eggs. No mother should ever walk to get food, walk into anywhere and feel lucky because they've gotten a dozen eggs for their family. So we committed to buying eggs year in and year out, and we get 2 truckloads of eggs every week that we purchase at the distribution center that we distribute, right? We too run on volunteers. We last year had 29,000 volunteers in our distribution center, packing food, repackaging food, and working in our distribution center to fill orders. And we had 8,000 at Harvest Solutions Farm, planting, weeding, and harvesting cabbage. So I invite all of you personally to come out and volunteer. If you've never worked on an industrial farm, you get to throw some cabbage around, you get to get dirty. This is not a garden, this is a farm. And I have had ladies walk up in heels and I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. As Lisa mentioned, last year we distributed 36 million pounds of food. In 2021, we distributed 60 million pounds of food. So our throughput and capacity has increased tremendously over the years. And the last thing I'll tell you is, there might be a question later, but I'll throw this out now for you to think about. Food banks are now being looked at to solve hunger, right? How do we end the lines? We've been throwing money at this for 40 years, and we still have hungry people in this country, which just perplexes people, right? So we're now being asked to be innovative and find the solutions, right? and feed people at the same time. So food banks are in a real tension point at this moment in time, trying to be forward thinking and serving the immediate need at the same time. So if you want to learn more about food banking, please come visit us. We're located in the Great Park in Irvine, and we would love to have you, your family, your company, your congregation, your Girl Scout troop. We take them all. Thank you.
We're there. You made that sound real fun. You know, this is complex. It's complicated. It's like that old school Facebook status. It's complicated at WISEPlace. And I say that because we're almost 100 years old, but the best way I would know how to describe us is that we're a 100-year-old startup. So in 2017, the year before I was brought in, our organization was losing $100,000 to $180,000 every year for almost a decade, and there was no money in the bank. We owed the city of Santa Ana almost $1 million, and our organization owed other people $2.3 million. And so that's what I mean that it's complicated, but I'm sure you can resonate with that because in business, not everything is just always an upward trajectory, and there's highs and there's lows. And that shouldn't scare you because change is possible in any sector. So I would say a business plan is whatever it takes, which is probably your business plan too. But similar to the other nonprofits, you know, I've been in nonprofits professionally since 2005, but I have never been in the space of housing solutions and ending homelessness in our community. So what I had to do, which is I'm sure all of us have had to do, is really learn the sector, really go out and meet with everybody and learn the sector so I could figure out what the strategy for our business model was, because we didn't have a winning one at the time, right? Our organization is going under, has no money in the bank. So in doing that, you know, we built government partnerships, so city, county, state of California. And I realized that the best way to leverage those strategic partnerships was to focus on housing, not shelter. And so what is the difference? Shelter is temporary, right? When someone is in shelter, they are still homeless because it's not a permanent place for them. So thank goodness there is shelter, but shelter is not meant to be permanent. It's a temporary solution for somebody. It's a safe haven. Housing is permanent. Housing is how you end homelessness in our community. And so looking at those, we were, until recently, solely providing shelter. Our organization, even though 100 years old, had never been able to evolve because we were struggling. And I'm really excited to say that we're building our first $30 million secured, opening November 1st of this year, almost 50 units for the most vulnerable citizens in Santa Ana. I took our shelter, that was the old Y building, that was about 23,000 square feet, but had things like a gymnasium. Like, why does a shelter need a gymnasium? We're not that athletic. And really kind of pulled Band-Aid and did construction, rehabbed part of the building, did a lot of new demo, and turning it into a little over 47,000 square feet. And most importantly, moving us from shelter to housing, because we don't want to be a temporary solution, we want to be a permanent solution. And then in terms of private foundations, really leverage the community's care for finding solutions for homelessness and privately fundraising for shelter. And again, the reason why I did that, because there's so many dollars. What I quickly learned is there's a lot of dollars, because this is a huge problem in our community and every community nationwide. But congratulations if you live in Orange County, you live in one of the 10 most expensive metropolitan cities in our nation, in the United States. And so I leveraged, so our business model now, and it's still evolving, but is to leverage city, county, state dollars into housing, and leverage private, corporate, non-government funding into shelter, which then leads to housing. So that is our business model now.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. And you guys are all so successful in your own right. And so as somebody who comes from marketing, I'm so curious, and you mentioned volunteers, how you get that message out, how you've been able to gain that visibility, and what are some of the challenges that you face as you're going about that? And jump in, just have a conversation.
Oh, she opened the floodgates, ladies.
I'll start, right? So we made a very intentional decision in 2020 to not use what we call sadness-based images. It is one thing, and even as it relates to ourselves, we started with ourselves and how we talked about ourselves. When I arrived, we had called ourselves a charity, which we are. And I said, no. I said, we are a nonprofit business. We don't hold out our hand for leftovers. We hold out our hand in partnership with the community because we add a value to this community. So we started with ourselves and telling our story in a positive way. We then looked at the images that we were putting out on social media, on television, and they were sad. I mean, they were black and white, there were people with sunken eyes, hungry, and hunger is a hard subject, right? To understand what hunger is and how people experience hunger, right? We think of hunger as the feeling that we feel when we're hungry. We think of abject hunger in Africa that we see the images of. And here it might be a student at UCI whose, funding is run out at the end of the month, so they need some help for a week. Or it might be a mom or a dad who's, lost some shifts at work and they just need some help, right? And what the food bank aims to do in providing food is provide hope, is provide that boost that you need to get through the month and say, I did it, I got through, I just needed a little help. So the images that we now put out, if you go to our social media or any of our marketing pieces, are often of children, because we like to say that we help healthy children thrive. I worked in education for 10 years, so I have a particular penchant for children eating healthy food, right? But adults are no different. You can't thrive. Food is celebratory, it's cultural, it binds us, right? It should be a positive message, and that our community is able to support 2 food banks to help those that may struggle, we think is a positive story. Do we want to end hunger, food insecurity, and not need food banks? Absolutely. I want to put myself out of business and go work for one of my friends. But sadly, that day is not on the horizon yet. But that is the story we tell, and our marketing tends to be much more hope-based.
And so follow-up question to that is, did you see a change in just reaction and volunteerism
Yes,
with that message?
we saw the change in volunteerism, because when you put out a hopeful message that you can help people by donating $5 or donating some cans or sharing your treasure, sharing your most precious resource, which is your time, right? We can always make more money, but we can't make more time. We saw a definite upswing in volunteers. Now, sadly, when the pandemic hit because of social distancing and the shutdown, then we had no volunteers, but that's another story for another day.
I love that, a positive spin. I hadn't really thought about that. I'm really glad you pulled the curtain away from the why.
Yeah.
We too are always telling the story, right? And I think that the story that we are telling, it's hard sometimes to know who are we talking to, because we're talking to you, we're talking to a corporation, we're talking to a potential client, we're talking to all these different audiences at the same time. But the one thing that kind of is the through line, I think, is the power of one person and the power of the individual to receive a service and change that trajectory, be empowered for, generations of change, for one person, you or me, that we have gifts to give and to share those. But I think that it's not easy, right? Yeah. And what I think we can probably all hang our hat on is the marketing tool that is most successful is relationships. We put out all sorts of material all the time, just like everyone else. But the thing that really moves the needle is not that transaction, but the relationship, that you come in, that that you're interested, that you're curious, that you want to express your power in the world in a way that is impactful. And I think I've never worked in the for-profit sector. It's the one place I haven't been. But I kind of feel bad when I hear stories of people coming and they say, I just came because I needed to fulfill a purpose that was bigger than someone else's paycheck. So that, for me, is also part of that story and the sharing it.
I don't know why I'm on this panel.
I'm
horrible at fundraising. No, I'm horrible at marketing. I have a story. I was talking to a donor. I didn't really know it was a donor, but I was talking to him, and he's like, so what do you need? And I was like, I need a controller, right? And I went into process. We do this, I need this is my, so I'm bad at this, I'm taking notes. That's not sexy. We're back office, we're finance, we're control, we're community bank. How do I market that? Well, I think what we're coming to is, and what inspires me, what gets me up, is community leaders who come to us and say, I have a solution. I just don't know how to push it out. That is inspiring. A controller is not inspiring. Loans are not inspiring. Working capital is not inspiring. But this person who's building an urban farm so that they can, help people. This person who says, I want to bring mental health counseling into low-income communities because they can't support it, so I'm getting all my counseling friends to do this pro bono. They are exciting. So I think what I'm coming to understand, it took me 25 years, is it's the leadership. It's the people who have lived experience, who know what it takes to get from rock bottom out back into a thriving life. And this is their story, and this is their journey. It is not about the back office. Now, that's what I live and breathe. Every day, I'm about the back office, but we are the engine to these people's passion. And so we don't do a good job of it now. But I think I'm starting to catch up and understand what we're inviting people into. Trying.
No, that's so true, and I'm glad that you said that, because really it is about the why. Like in everything that you share, it goes back to the why, which is what Anne's saying. And I really related to what Claudia said, because, whether you're thriving or, where we were in 2018 when I got there, there was no money for anything. So, I thought to myself, how dare I spend any money on marketing? And that's not the right mindset, right? It's a scarcity mindset when you're running your business. But marketing has been a journey, because marketing is expensive. But where we started with was like interns, or what could we do through volunteerism? We completely rebranded our organization in 2020, and that took significant capital. But we gave ourselves like a year and a half to get out of survival mode and then say, okay, we haven't lost a penny in 2 years. That's not something the organization did for 10, 15 years. So we are tripling the number of people served. Our services are better. We owe it to our mission to tell our story better, to tell the story of women rebuilding their lives. And so we made a significant investment with an actual company. It wasn't like me and Canva or interns, right? Like with a company. And I think that was a lesson. That was happening in 2018.
Yeah, that's good.
That was, you shouldn't be doing that as CEO.
Yeah.
But, that's where we were. And that's okay, as long as you don't get stuck there. Like you have a plan to get yourself out. You have a plan to move your business forward. And we desperately needed to remarket, because we were in the same place. Our organizations, well, first of all, our website wasn't mobile friendly, and I just gasped. I worked there for almost 2 years and never said our mission statement out loud, because I was embarrassed of it. Because our mission statement was to make women be positive contributors to society. And I'm like, the word make, ick, right? And that's okay to say that, right? That was kind of gross. We don't make anybody do anything. And then to make women be positive contributors to society, well, are they not positive? I was like, oh my goodness, this is our official mission statement. And so we desperately needed to rebrand. And we made that investment. And so marketing we still struggle with as a kind of a grassroots organization, but it's something that we're learning to invest in, when appropriate. I would love to see us have kind of a marketing budget on an annual basis. And I think that we can get there probably in 2025. That's the goal, right? So again, for marketing, and we tell our story differently as well, because the women we serve are so resilient and so inspiring. They inspire other women to seek help. They inspire the community to kind of walk alongside them in their journey. But our organization, if you were on a desktop when our website was working, it was always women experiencing homelessness from the backs or the sides, never straight on. And so it added to the stigma, our own marketing, unintentionally, like with good intention, our organization was doing that, but unintentionally adding to the stigma of people experiencing homelessness. And so we changed that. We proudly tell our story. We share our why. And it's a little controversial, I think, in nonprofits, where this could be unique to nonprofits, but telling kind of your client's story There's a lot of dialogue. I think, do you tell your client story? How do you tell your client story? And we proudly tell our client story, and the women we serve want to tell their client story. And of course, we would never do so when it puts somebody, if there's a safety risk or anything like that, because almost all the women we serve are experiencing homelessness because they're survivors of domestic violence, which is something that I don't know that the general public really understands about women experiencing homelessness. The number one reason is that it's tied to surviving violence. And so obviously we take a lot of safety precautions, but when someone's 5-6 years out, they really want to tell their story because it becomes such an inspiration to another person that has the courage to, flee that abuse and rebuild.
Was that like 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Whenever anybody asks me about overhead, right, which includes marketing,
Yes.
fundraising, right,
Yes.
I always pause and they're like, you're spending, X amount of dollars, and I go, let me ask you a question. Do you go to Chili's? Do you buy Coke? Do you buy cookies, right? You give your money to these organizations because that's yummy stuff, right? Do you ever ask them their overhead, how much they spend on marketing? And I'll take it a step further. That stuff's not good for you, right? So questioning the humble marketing budgets of organizations that are literally tackling the problems that nobody else will, not the private sector, not the government, because that's what we're doing, it is almost insulting to me. And you question my budget, my marketing budget, but not RJR Nabisco. Maybe just think about it.
I think that's really, really different. I mean, I did 30 years in corporate America working for a lot of those kind of companies. They are self-policing from the standpoint of competition. If I'm not good at overhead, I don't survive. Whereas when somebody's talking about a nonprofit, it's a fair question, because I want to know if I give you $1, does 95 cents go to overhead, or does 95 cents go to the cause? Which one is that? So
And
when
how
I
do we-
hear somebody like Tunnel to Towers say 95% go to the people we're supporting as opposed to administration, I realize they're all different. And some people it's 50-50 and some people's 95-5. I understand that, but I think it's a fair question to say, if I'm going to contribute, how much goes to your pocket versus how much goes to support what you're doing?
I would counter with, it's a fair question. The question I love to get is, what's your impact?
Okay.
That's the question. And whether you're 90, 50, because a food bank, we are less than 5%. And I feel bad saying that, because when you're doing social services, that overhead is a lot higher because it's people delivering the services, right? So, fair question to be sure.
Yeah.
And also, I think to the point of impact, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about marketing, so I'll hone in on that particular piece of overhead. You can't have business if people don't know that you're there to do business with.
Sure.
And it is, I understand the sort of donor-centric concept of, I want to make sure I'm making a good investment. I totally understand it. I'm the same way. I want to get a good value for my buck. Get that. The problem is that we perpetuate this concept that there is some, excess that is being wasteful in the nonprofit industry. And I don't think you could say any blanket statement about any blanket business and say that this is 100% true and all the things. Of course there is abuse. Of course there is minimization on both sides of that. But we couldn't do the work we do if we didn't pay rent, if we didn't have the lights on, if we didn't buy the tissues. So there is, I think, a real dance and a delicate dance to do. I was hearing you talk about that marketing piece and that decision, and I was so wanting to affirm A, your choice, but B, the resistance that you were feeling, that you were up against. And I think this is where the more knowledge that we all have and share about the industry, the more you can also be an ambassador and spokesperson to say that actually let's think about impact, let's not think about overhead, and also being a part of the solution, right? So it's an invitation to you.
I love it. And so I've been a funder too. And if I see a nonprofit that says only 95% of our stuff goes to program, I don't trust it. I don't want to fund them because I don't believe it, because it's not possible. So if we were here 20 years ago, we'd be saying a very different story to you. We'd be wearing very different clothes. We wouldn't want to look too glossy. We wouldn't want to look like businesses. because the capitalization of the nonprofit industry is driven 20 years ago by us looking charitable, little scuffy. We're in a church basement, right? We're not businesses, we're charities. So you can trust us. The second we become businesses, that's a valid question. Well, I want to see, and we're all like, don't look too close. But we do need to run like businesses. But the other weird thing about our business is when you go to Starbucks and you get a cup of coffee, you're deciding whether that cup of coffee is worth that $5-6. Our consumers are not the funders. So the end product is complex solutions for complex problems in the community.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Great point.
It took me 25 years.
And just to act like I feel like I'm going to church right now. I love this. Hallelujah. My favorite quote is that nonprofit is just a tax status. It's, you don't go and order things and say, I want to make sure you spend the absolute bare minimum on what it is I'm consuming. And you don't do that because, again, it's yummy stuff. You want to make sure it's good stuff that I'm having. The same goes for the impact that these ladies are up here trying to create. It's got to be meaningful, and meaningful means it's going to cost money. And that goes for even talent. When they're hiring people to work for their organization, that talent is of value. Right. They could go shoestring and just decide we'll bring in the bare minimum or just operate purely on volunteerism. Impact then will shrink, but you'll know that your dollars went, 95% of your dollar went to the tiny impact they made. Or would you rather say, you know what, it was an 80-20, but man, there was so much impact there.
Ask these ladies how expensive it is to manage thousands of volunteers.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, kind of going to the difference between running a nonprofit as a business and running a regular business, can you share sort of the similarities? Because I think that's true. People don't realize that it does take overhead to run these organizations successfully to make the impact versus some of the things that are different, and kind of address that, because I think that's an important distinction.
I think we've really started the identification process, which is the outcome, right? The outcome we are seeking is very different than a business model. We are not trying to make any particular person rich. We are trying to enrich our communities. And the way we do that is by creating impact one person at a time. So our bottom line is a very different bottom line, but the business is the business. And sometimes we need to run a big surplus in order to make an investment next year in a big infrastructure piece that we need to be able to be scalable and grow our business. That's not something we talk about, right? We don't say, well, we need to clear $1 million this year so that we can buy that fill in the blank. But the business itself is run exactly like every other business. There is no difference. I love what you said, David, that it is just a status. We have all of the same trials and tribulations. We do all the same strategic planning and seeking input from our stakeholders and figuring out what is the best way to create the most impact. We manage staff and people. People do all the things people do. Good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah. But the FDIC does not consider nonprofits to be small businesses. So if I have a small nonprofit, and I just had this experience where we went to bank after bank after bank, we had a business ready to launch. They were $9 million a year, but because they were a C3 and they didn't have a banking credit history, they could not get a line of credit to handle their multi-million-dollar public contracts that were encumbered for them. And banks were like, oh, this is amazing. It was a reentry program. This is great. Oh, you've got a rec. We can't. We can't underwrite this for you. So we ended up taking our cash reserve, loaning them money out of just so they could leave us. So, there are, because of the assumptions about nonprofits and what they should be and what they should look like, we are undercapitalized. We got one hand tied behind our back. When we have to run our businesses, we're not doing it with the same working capital, lines of credit, and investor, support that other businesses are. But I would advocate that the product we bring, which is healthy communities, which is kids getting food, which is people living lives of dignity, benefits us all. And we need to spend more on marketing so that we can connect those dots for people. Because when you talk to people like that, they're like, we're with you. but the assumptions about what nonprofits should be and what they can do. And again, I think the paradigm shift that's so exciting to me is it's not that we're trying to meet a need, we're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different type of thinking, and it requires a whole different level of investment. And that's what I'm excited to see happening.
I think there is a change in the donor community to, probably not evident right now in the world we live in, but I'm seeing more people that will make that general operating gift. Yeah. The trust-based philanthropy. I'm not an expert, you guys are the expert, you use it where you need it. I'm seeing more of that, and that's a godsend to nonprofits, to be able to earn the trust of donors so that they give you their unencumbered resources to help the community. I will say on the opposite end, and I mentioned that the food bank, during coming out of COVID, for the first time ever, we had funds to invest, right? To future-proof the food bank for anything that happens in the future. So we invested the money, and I actually had a donor say to me, "Oh, you guys did well. You don't need my money anymore." We were almost, that wasn't his intention, but I felt like we were being penalized for being prudent with the money that we were given to steward. So again, I think that's another difference, is that we can actually be too successful, to your point, when it comes to the funds, the precious funds that we're entrusted with from the community.
So I'm curious if there's, this is a very philanthropic group. If somebody were to want to start a nonprofit, what kind of advice would you give them?
Run!
What would you
Don't. There are over 3,000 nonprofits just here in Orange County, and I am not joking. Please don't start another one. I'm not kidding. Yeah, we are so much better when we work together and collaborate. If you are thinking about starting a nonprofit, stop.
Or call me.
Call Ann. Call Ann. Definitely call Ann. Yeah. Right, but wouldn't you rather be investing in collaborative and organic relationships between solving problems with the strengths and the resources that are already in the community?
Yes, and. I have witnessed miracles. I'll tell you a story, and this is the project we loaned money to that no bank would touch. The two people came to me in 2014. They had a heart for reentry. One of them had been in the system, and they just said, we got a $20,000 grant, can we park it here? And I said, sure, because that was my heart too. And it grew and grew and grew, and there were other reentry businesses, and there were other places that people could fund, but they had a unique idea, and it was trauma-informed care inside the jails and bridging to other things. It was a slightly different strategy. And my philosophy, and again, you're not wrong, there's too many nonprofits, and we compete against each other, and there's not enough money to go around. But my fear on the don't start a nonprofit is sometimes we get into groupthink, and sometimes somebody comes out of a lived experience, they come out of the jail, and they have an idea, and it's nowhere to be found. There may be other nonprofits working with the jails, there may be other nonprofits doing good work, but this person has a vision. Now, this person may not be able to turn it into a business, but on an incubator, you can risk failure. You can try. You don't have to set up an incorporated entity. You don't have to have a full back office. Day one, you can flip a switch, and you've got a nonprofit in a box. So try and fail. See if you can fundraise. See if your idea fits the market. I like to say I've killed a lot of ideas. That is my contribution to society, right? It's like come and fail, but fail here without safely and without having to pull a board together and without doing that fundraising dance. Fail fast, but sometimes they don't fail. And now we have a multi-million-dollar business in Orange County that really is doing amazing work with the reentry population. And that's the why. That's why yes, but mostly no.
I think the answer lies between these two ladies, and that's do your homework, right?
Yeah,
See what's out there. Very often we get approached by super well-meaning folks. I've got $10,000, I want to open a pantry. Oh, let us show you where there's a need. Oh, no, I want to open it in Santa Ana. Don't open it in Santa Ana. There are hundreds of pantries in Santa Ana. You know where we need pantries? Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a food desert, but if you're looking for charitable food assistance in Huntington Beach, it's you gotta move around. So do your homework and understand the true need, the niche, the specific need you're trying to fill. And I guarantee you, you will be a lot more successful and you'll get support from places like Charitable Ventures and other nonprofits that will partner with you.
This was amazing. This conversation was like the conversation I have with myself. That's so true.
Yeah.
So each of you have amazing stories. We were talking about the stories. So I would love it if you could share maybe a story of impact that you've had or a challenge that you've overcome as a business leader, that you all have had just such amazing experiences, and we'd just love to hear from you.
I'll share a quick one. I'll be brief. Coming in, as you mentioned, I'm the second ever CEO of Working Wardrobes, and our founder, Jerry Rosen, is a small lady, and people kept saying, you've got really big shoes to fill. And before I ever walked in the door, I was really worried about my shoes. I was really worried about filling these shoes. And that was my mistake, because the best advice I received and barrier I had to overcome, the barrier was me. And the advice I received that invited me over it was, Bonni, wear your own shoes. Don't walk in anybody else's shoes. And the irony is that as a leader, I'm always preaching that just be you. Bring you. Don't bring the person you want to be or the thing that you're pretending to be. Just bring you, and unique you will contribute in a unique way. And yet I was the one that needed to hear that advice. And once I just accepted that I was going to wear my own shoes and it wasn't going to be anything like Jerry's and that would be okay, I was just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how long had she served?
Over 30 years. Yeah.
I always share this because when I tell people when I started at the food bank, I get a bit of a gasp when they think about it. I started at the food bank January 31st, 2020. Yeah, thank you.
Lucky you.
Lucky, yeah, but no, really lucky me, because I came to learn food banking. I came from the education and health world in Los Angeles. I was new to Orange County. I lived here, but I had not worked in the nonprofit sector here. So I came to learn food banking, and for 6 glorious weeks, I was the new person at the food bank that didn't know anything, and I was learning food banking, right? And then March 14th happened, and the MBA stopped, and we didn't have volunteers anymore. We certainly didn't have enough money to cover the food that we would need to buy for the 2 years, but oh heck, it was only gonna last for 2 weeks anyway, right? So it was gonna be fine. What we went through and what I went through in trying to respond with my coworkers, right? You know, I literally on March 15th was calling like shopping malls and sporting venues. Can we use your parking lot? I think we're gonna need it, right? And I was amazed by the generosity of the county. But the point of my story is that on March 16th, I was no longer the new girl. None of us knew how to pandemic. And it took us a year to learn how to pandemic. And I got to know my coworkers, and more importantly, I wasn't burdened with the old model of food banking. Unbeknownst to me, I literally was at the forefront of the new food banking, which would be heavily shaped by COVID-19 and the response and everything that happened. So never let a good crisis pandemic pass by without seizing the opportunity to learn and grow from it, because I don't know that I would have become the CEO 2 years ago had I not been through that experience. Literally, when everybody ran home, we ran out. No mask, no vaccine. Well, we had masks, but 6,000 people every Saturday at the food bank. I tested my own kind of like, oh, do I really want to do this? There was no time to think about it. We just did. So I am very thankful for the experience that I went through.
I don't know if I want to tell my story. All right.
We got you.
Okay. This is like therapy. I guess my story is, or the lesson I've learned over the last few decades is to think differently and to invite people in to help you think differently. I was not a nonprofit to start. I started a for-profit in 2002, and it was a consultancy. It was organizational strategy and program design. And out of a random conversation with the Community Foundation in 2007, where I was calling them saying, hey, I've got some projects that need sponsorship, can I send them to you? And they said, come here, we gotta get out of this business, why don't you take them? And I said, well, I'm not a nonprofit, I'm a for-profit. And they said, well, why don't you start one? So I said, okay. And in 2007, I started a nonprofit. So I had a for-profit with my husband. I had a nonprofit that started with 5 small, project ideas. And for whatever reason, they both started to grow. And I was the pro bono director of the nonprofit and the, working hard of the for-profit. That was my family business and paid the mortgage. And fast forward to 2018, and I'm back at the Community Foundation, and now I'm crying because I'm like, I can't do this. And both were multi-million, and I couldn't see my way through it. I'm like, they're too big, I can't do both. The nonprofit's not sustainable, clearly, because I was still working for free. And Shelley Haas looked at me and she said, why don't you merge them? And it hit me just out of the blue. Well, first of all, you can't merge a nonprofit and a for-profit, but you can donate a for-profit into a nonprofit. And it was a solution for me because I couldn't let the nonprofit go. It wasn't sustainable, it was too big, but there was something about it that really reflected my heart. But I couldn't let the for-profit go because that was mortgage and family and retirement. So out of the mouths of friends, you know, she just said it, and I was like, I don't have to let this go. I found a way through. And so we did. In July 2019, we consolidated, we moved forward, then COVID. And I believe that if we had hit COVID as two separate companies, we both would have gone down. But together, we were able to pivot and do the relief work that the county needed. So I couldn't see my way out of that box. I was so in the weeds and so invested in both companies. I was just breaking. And someone just kind of gently nudged me in the right direction. And I never envisioned that Charitable Ventures could be a combination of both my for-profit heart and my nonprofit heart. But that was my learning.
I love that innovation. I hope you have a story that you'd love to share with us.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I think of impact, and I think of housing. You know, I've been fortunate to work for like employment, you know, youth mentoring nationwide, and this has given, on all the jobs have given my life so much purpose, and I've seen all the good. But this is different because I've, you know, before WISEPlace, I had never walked into a shelter organization. I have never walked in, like, imagine your high school or your college gymnasium, and when I walked in, this is why I took the job, because I walked in and I saw women, 70, 80, 90-year-old women on cots 3 inches apart in a gymnasium, and it was freezing. It was freezing. The building didn't have heat or air at the time. And, you know, I'm very much a heart and a mind person, and it spoke to my heart and my mind, the opportunity to turn around a struggling business and ensure that it not only survives but thrives, has been really meaningful to me, and to be able to meet the women that we serve. And you know, the evolution of our organization to go from shelter to housing, which is impactful for all of us. Everybody's mission is impactful for all of us in this room, right? Because there's a lot of stigma around homeless, and that's a whole different conversation, but I'd love to have it with you. But you know, the solution to ending homelessness is possible, but sometimes it seems so overwhelming. How do you end homelessness in our community? You think that it's not possible.
It's too big.
But the last 5 years of WISEPlace has taught me that it is possible. So the impact for me, ultimately, whether I think you're a business, a for-profit or a nonprofit, is like the alignment of culture plus strategy. And I think that has been my biggest learning lesson.
Beautiful. Fantastic. You guys are all so amazing. And I want to kind of turn to the future. We're in 2024, big unknowns ahead of us. From your perspective, what do you see ahead in 2024 as it impacts nonprofits?
Hold on. Strap in.
Yeah.
I heard a great acronym the other day, because I think 2024 is going to impact so many facets of the nonprofit world. I think the need will be impacted, you know, one way or another. It's going to go up or down, but you know, right now from what we're seeing, it's holding steady and going up slightly with the economy. But the business climate, the social climate, God knows the political climate, right? I heard this acronym, and you guys have probably heard it, but it's VUCA, V-U-C-A, vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? That is affecting the for-profit world, and if it affects the for-profit world, if it's a cold in the for-profit world, it's pneumonia in the nonprofit world, because much of our funding does come from corporate streams, from individuals that do well from their business. Here's an example. We were going through our kind of list of donors, because I sit with the development team, and we had one donor who did amazingly well during COVID and in the years afterward. I think last year he gave us $300,000, one person. This year he's given us $25,000, and we're very thankful, right? And we're certainly not going to go back. But one individual's fortune is affecting our organization. It's $250,000 gap that we need to make up, right? And that's happening over and over again. So the very fuel, right? No mission, no money, no money, no mission, right? I think that's what keeps us up at night, the growing need and the uncertain future for the resources that we need to do our business. At least it's what's keeping me up every night.
I think our industry gets hit hard by volatility, economic, social, and political. This is for being a nonpartisan industry, it is we get hit by politics. We're gonna launch this year just a OC Votes campaign with the idea that nonprofits as nonpartisans can be trusted messengers in times of misinformation and ambiguity and fear. And we're not here to lobby, but we can say, you can drop your ballot here. It's safe to vote. Here's a voter guide. So I think the volatility is gonna hit our industry hard, but I think the nonprofit industry as nonpartisans, and we should stay that way, has a role to play in keeping it real and being trusted local support for organizations. So I'm hoping in 2024 we see more nonprofits stepping up to kind of keep things stable. But it feels like a storm is coming.
I thought you were going to say you were going to run for office.
I'm going to run for
office. I'll vote for you, Ann.
Thank you. No. I love our nonpartisan status. Thank you.
Not in 2024.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
I'll wear a pin too. We're in the business of self-sustaining work, right? The idea doesn't ever go away. So workforce development ebbs and flows, of course, with the economy, but that's really, as you mentioned, it's about the funding and where's the funding coming from. So I shared with you that we have these 3 legs of our revenue, and if unemployment is really high, then government investment usually in workforce development goes up. So we have to be able to cover the lag. And I think this is one of those pieces, you were mentioning this with the capital and the startups, right? And you also need to know that we have to have a lot of cash on hand to be able to wait the 3 or 4 months it takes the government to pay us back for the work that we did, and that can add up to millions of dollars. So we need those private dollars also to keep coming in. And as Claudia mentioned really eloquently, right, that it's not predictable, and those relationships and that trust that we build with people doesn't change what's in or not in their pocketbooks to give. So I am a little bit nervous in that sense all the time. Like it doesn't feel different. It just feels like we're always worried about, are we gonna have enough revenue? The problem that I don't sleep well sometimes about is that we have a waiting list. We have more people that need help than what we can serve, and that bothers me. It bothers me to not be able to say, yes, right through, yes, you go, and instead to have to be setting a cadence for our ability to serve.
Do you have a waiting list?
Yes.
We have a waiting list too. So when employment is affected, housing and shelter and food are affected. So we're actually very related. And I like to think we don't compete, but that we're aligned. Yeah. But our needs as organizations are great, and we need more help.
I love the collaboration, and just so the group knows, so Bonni, a couple of years ago, started an amazing women group that gets together of female CEOs in the nonprofit space. So very collaborative, and I think that, testament to you and pulling everybody together and working together rather than competing. So I think that's wonderful.
Can I just brag about these ladies for a second? Because I was like the new one on the scene.
Yes, absolutely.
When I got hired, I started asking people, and this is literally what I said, who are the kick-ass CEOs? Who are the really good ones? I want to meet those. And you're looking at them. So there is an amazing force of talent here in Orange County that is leading the sector, and it is such a privilege to know and get to be your drinking buddy and your therapist and your biggest cheerleader, and it comes back in spades. So
I worked in LA for 15 years in the nonprofit sector, and it is competitive, it is stabbed in the back, it is nothing like this. And when people ask me what's different in Orange County, I don't want to explain it all because people won't believe me. I just say, the sun just shines differently here, right? It's just a different place, right? I just don't, unless you're here, you don't get it. Unless you see these women, and you understand that, you know, we're aligned in what we do, we support each other as nonprofits, and all the nonprofits, not just the ones led by women. It's really a marvelous space to do this very hard work.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Before we go to Q&A, I would just love to give each of you an opportunity to sort of brag on yourself, on your organization. So I'd love you to share your favorite story of how you helped someone, and just, you know, heartwarming stories that tug at all of our hearts.
I'll share a story because I think about this woman all the time. So in the spirit of collaboration, right, I mentioned that Working Wardrobes, we could not do what we do without partner agencies. And so when I came on the scene, I wanted to meet the partners, like who are we doing this stuff with? So one of the partner agencies that I went to visit was Salvation Army, and I didn't even make it past the threshold of the building, and this woman just like, I mean, she was like lightning. She was like, "Are you from Working Wardrobes?" So I was like, "Oh, yes, who are you?" And she said, "My name is Cindy, and you changed my life." And I was like, "Tell me more about that, Cindy." And so she shared with me her story, and she had, you know, lost her job. She had struggled with substance abuse. She was incarcerated. She was participating in a gang. She lost custody of her son. She lost her marriage. I mean, by every definition, rock bottom. And so she came to Salvation Army to get sober, and they have a sober living program, a residential program. And so as our partner, we would come in at the last 8 weeks of that program and get the people employment ready. And so in that environment, Cindy was, as I said, where are you now? Where are you going? How are we going to get there, right? So the exercise to figure out where are you going was a vision board. And literally, Cindy goes to her desk, she grabs it, and she's like, "This is over a decade old, but it's still my true north, and I'm still after creating this life today." I'm so moved, but like that would be enough, but no, there's more. She's decided, obviously, she's working at Salvation Army. She said, "I've made an intentional choice that I want my career to give back to the community, so I'm here, 40-hour employee." But wait, there's more. One of the soft skills trainings we did during that 8 weeks was a responsibility class. And we really hone in a lot on transferable skills so that it doesn't matter what industry you're going into, you can take that skill with you. Cindy says, all of this was amazing for me. I was able to rebuild my life from it, but I know now it's incumbent on me to help the next person. And so what does she do? She teaches a responsibility class on a weekly basis. So I'm hearing Cindy and her story. I mean, I'm melted butter on the floor. And then she shares with me that, I told you, again, part of our sort of culmination is that we get success suits, right? So as part of this program's integration, the sort of graduation, if you will, was to have this wardrobing experience. And so Cindy got her beautiful dress and blazer, and she said, "Bonni, that I know it's just a dress, like rational person, I know it's just a dress, but for me, it's a symbol of what I became and what I'm continuing to strive for, and it's an important dress to me. So much so that just a couple of years ago, I got remarried, and I wore the dress to my wedding."
Wow.
So that year, this is 2022, we decided we've got to honor Cindy. This is amazing. You don't always get to stay in touch with clients 10, 12, 15 years later. So what did Cindy do? She came and shared her story at our gala, and she wore the dress.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing story.
I can't follow that. Come on. I'm the incubator.
And the self-deprecator.
Come on, Claudia. Come on.
I've got one. It's similar. It's a different take on it, but I like to try to get out to pantries and distributions when I can and see the mission in action, right? And to warm my heart, to be sure, but also to figure out if people are being food safe and are they following the rules, and is the line of cars okay, and all that stuff. But toward the end of the pandemic, I had the good fortune to visit a distribution and meet a recipient of food. Her name was Elvira, and she saw that I spoke Spanish, and so she came up and she told me how important the food was to her. And not the first time that I'd been approached by a client and talked about how important it was for her to have vegetables and protein to feed her family. And of course, I was touched by her. And I saw her a few more times because I like to go to that distribution. It's a large one, and we're really trying to help them grow it. And the the third time I believe I saw her, she said, you know what, I'm getting back on my feet. This food has allowed us to stay in our home. I thought we were going to lose our home because our budget was that tight. And I'm excited now to go back to work. And I was like, well, good for you, right? So I came back again a month later, and I didn't realize she worked for the nonprofit. And her work was helping other people. And I went up to her, I said, I didn't know you worked here. And she said, yeah, we were really struggling. I was taking care of my sister's kids. I couldn't work, my husband couldn't work. She said, and her words really blew me away. I missed my job helping the less fortunate and those that are poor. And I looked at her and I said, it's such a matter of perspective, right? This woman, who by many of our standards is probably poor, economically disadvantaged, did not see herself that way. She saw it as her cause to help other people, and she thanked me for helping her do that. And I never forget her. She is still there. Every time I walk in, she gives me a high five. Everybody's working again, but we helped get her through a hard patch to get her to doing the work that she loved to do. And that's one of my favorite stories.
I mean, in this moment, I just think of my first day at WISEPlace, where I thought somebody was punking me. Like, I thought someone would come out with like a camera and be like, these are the things we didn't tell you that you didn't find in our 990. Our building was leaking, the tiles were falling off the roof. A 92-year-old woman named Lady T was trying to plug in her cell phone right outside my office because I work in the shelter. And I went to plug it in, and smoke was coming out of the outlets. I mean, it was an organization, when you lack money, you can't keep up with the infrastructure, and we're a shelter, right? This is where people are living temporarily. And then she was sitting right next to Annie, and I got to know them, and I'm still in communication with both of them, and they are so inspirational and so just life-changing. Lady T was 92 years old the day I met her. She's 97 now. She had an amputated leg, and she did not feel safe because of what she experienced in her life at 92 years old. I was raised by my grandparents, so it really, I mean, I blame Lady T for taking this job, really. But she, my heart broke for her because she was choosing to, like, the best choice for her at the time in 2018 was to be in the encampments in Santa Ana. And she was assaulted several times, and she was so vulnerable. Because a 92-year-old woman, or any woman, right, any person, at any age, it's hard to navigate these really bureaucratic systems, right? And so how do you expect a 92-year-old to have a computer, have the internet, sit behind a computer and internet, and navigate disability, social security? And so, when our shelter opened up as the only shelter in all of Orange County that is female only, it's unaccompanied women only, she felt safe there because she has, a history of trauma and abuse. And it is a happy ending because change is possible. We were able to get into that bureaucracy with her, get all her documents ready, and it took a year and a half because our systems are so broken. And that's the good thing about nonprofits. You kind of work within kind of these broken government systems. And Lady T has been in assisted living with skilled nursing care, and we still see her every month. And she has family, and she's hopeful. Next to her, and Annie was able to run when the smoke came out of the outlets. I grabbed Lady T and wheeled her away, and then called the fire department and said, why do you let us run this shelter like this? What am I supposed to be doing to fix this? But Annie Parks was amazing. Annie is, mid-60s, I would say. She was an educator. Annie was a teacher for 20, 30 years. She has a master's degree. She's currently working on her PhD. So this is somebody who worked day in and day out, 20, 30 years as an educator, right here in Orange County, but she was in an abusive relationship. And she had the courage to leave her husband, 20, 25 years into it. And Annie was living in her car, which so many people do live in their car. So Annie would go from her faith-based congregation to the Albertsons across the street, but Annie's car kept getting broken into. Oftentimes people will ask me, like, well, what happens in shelter? And I'm like, the first time people are in shelter, Annie slept. Annie slept for like 3 or 4 days because it's the first time in months that Annie was able to sleep because she's not sleeping in her car and she's not worried about her car breaking in. Annie now, it took us about 2 years to get into affordable housing because our community lacks affordable housing. And that is important for all of us, right? When it takes like $85,000 to rent a 2,700 one-bedroom apartment in Orange County, which is the going rate, if y'all didn't know that, that's what it is. That's why we have homelessness, right? Homelessness is a math problem. It's an economy problem. Housing is not affordable. So because we lack affordable housing, it took us 2 years. So Annie had the safety to be in our shelter every day. And Annie is now housed. She's in affordable housing, and she's a part-time peer coordinator for a mental health program. And these are two women that if any one of us would have looked at them, in 2018, 2019, we would have thought, what do we do here? How is a 92-year-old homeless? But she's housed. And Annie is such an inspiration. And Annie is so critical to our program. She sits on our board. And she's so skilled in reaching out to people who may be afraid to come into congregate shelter. But she, and we don't do a lot of press. We've already talked about my marketing issues. But when we launched our first of 2 housing initiatives that will close on the end of this year, and we helped Annie get hip surgery. Annie was in the emergency room so much because she's living in her car. We were able to take care of all of that, and she's proactive. She now has a hip replacement, and she was dancing with Vicky Vargas on the Channel 4 News a few months ago, right? And this is a woman who's living in her car, right? So I think, we're all so privileged to be able to work in environments where we see that type of hope tied to our mission.
Thank you all for what you do. I'm going to open it up for questions.
Hi, thank you all so much for being here. I've been very excited for this panel. You guys have done amazing. So my question for you is, you guys wear a lot of hats. You guys are advocates, you're community leaders, but my question is when you're wearing your employer hat. So as an employer in the nonprofit world, do you have any advice for attracting and retaining talent, just because there's so much turnover in the nonprofit space, you can't necessarily compete in those big industry salaries?
We've done a lot of work on this over the last couple of years to become an employer of choice and to maintain relationships with our team that are as dignified as they are with our clients. As a leadership team, as a management team, we came together and we actually did a book study. It was the Gallup book, It's the Manager. And we used that as a discussion point. I feel like I'm yelling over the garbage can. I hope you don't feel like I'm yelling at you.
You're winning. You're winning.
Putting on that hat, my big voice hat. So we, as a collective leadership team, talked about what were the things that we wanted to create as a culture together, that we were going to create together. And then we did a lot of talking to our staff about what is it that you want, right? So we had the research, we had our inclinations, and then we talked to our team, and we developed an entirely new way of approaching individual development over the course of your employment with Working Wardrobes. So that means that we have 4, every quarter there's a check-in, and that means you're having constant conversations, and those are coaching conversations. Those are about, what do you want to get out of this experience, and how can I help you learn and grow in the way you want to? We are not able to compensate people the way that we should and we would like to, but we figured out alternate ways of compensation. So one example of that is, of course, we went to a hybrid workforce. That's not innovative anymore, but we went to a 980 work schedule so that we, in essence, gave our teams 26 days off. They were jumping out the roof. I'm going to work a longer day, but I get a day off every other week? Yes, please. We do all sorts of, descriptive praise and peer praise so that it's not it feels more of like a flat organization. Everyone's voice is invited to the table to create change, but also that you're not waiting to be, patted on the head by someone who matters. Everyone matters, and creating that culture together of, I caught you doing something amazing and I want to make sure everybody else knows about it. We also just recently updated our core values, and I think being able to talk about our core values in a way that is super behavioral, right? One of our core values is thoughtful relator. That's not an everyday value, right? But when I talk about the way that we treat our clients, and we treat each other, we see that behavior is how we came to a workplace where we value thoughtful relatorness, and that's how we show up, and that's how we treat each other. Those are some of the examples.
I would say I would offer 2 suggestions is look at your job descriptions. When I got to the food bank and I started with my own, sometimes job descriptions can be filters to keep people out. I really look at like, is this do we really need the guy who drives the forklift to have a master's degree? No. I mean, you know, I'm all for education, don't get me wrong, but let's really look at these qualifications that we're putting into these job descriptions, not only from a kind of retention and attraction, but from a DEI lens. You know, you really, that's an important thing to look at. So I always tell people, look at your job descriptions. The second thing that we've started doing is looking for the hidden talent, right? We have 96 people in our organization, and yes, we have our job categories. We have people that work in the distribution center. We have HR, and we have fundraisers. But there's hidden talent out there that I think I read a statistic that most organizations, nonprofit or for-profit, utilize about 60% of the talent in their workforce. So we started asking people, you know, you're a great forklift operator. What else do you do? What else do you like to do? I found out that 2 guys that drive forklifts are killer with Excel. So when the development team is doing all that Excel stuff that they do, I'm like, you got to go get Edwin and Isaac, because they're the ones that know how to do this pivot table business that you guys haven't figured out yet. So, and that makes them feel good because they're helping out another team. So really look for the hidden talents in the team from a retention standpoint, and also from a maximizing your team standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. Ditto, all that. I guess my one additive might be, I'm understanding now how important it is for every team member to be able to connect to the business vision. And from the position that I hold at the company, I get that every day in spades. And I forget that someone over here in finance or someone over here in, you know, HR and ops, they may see their lane, but they're not sure how it connects to the larger vision. So at the beginning of this year, we had 3 days in a row of in-service, and I'm like, oh my God, my team's gonna kill me. But the reflection that I got back was, they're like, we had so many ahas, we had so many connection points between themselves and the vision, and the cross-functionality across divisions, because people get in silos. So that is a recent aha for me, that it's not enough to have a mission. Everyone's here for the mission. Otherwise, we'd be working in for-profit space and making more money. But the vision is sometimes hard to hold on to when you're in one thing, doing one department function for the company. Yeah, that's good. My addition.
Anybody else?
I believe in the power of storytelling, and you pointed to something that's very important in Orange County, which is that we're viewed as the place of affluence, the place that doesn't have need. There can't be food insecurity. There can't be people who are struggling with the skills to get jobs. There can't be women who are in need of stable housing. You know, nonprofits can't need support from Ann Olin and the Olin Group and Charitable Ventures, which Boys and Girls Club was great partners with. You've got a room full of potential storytellers. How can we help to try to change that narrative and make people see the need in Orange County and invest here at home?
That's a great question.
I guess I tell people to look at the engine of our economy, right? This is a very prosperous county. We have wonderful business here. Look at Disneyland, right? I mean, I have the privilege of having a board member from Disneyland, and he joined our board because he knows that a significant portion of his workforce often needs to rely on food pantries and the food bank. So when you look at Disneyland and the convention center and the sports teams and the restaurant and the tourism, that is driven by wage workers and their families, who are the most hit in any economic downturn. Through the Food Bank Network, through Feeding America, which we're part of, I was told that Las Vegas and Orange County were the first 2 cities to, quote, go down because of the nature of our economy, right? There's a significant percentage of people here that could not work from home, that could not work. So look at our economy and look at whose backs it's on, quite frankly, and that tells you why there's need here.
I'll just add some data to that, which is that we know in Orange County to just cover basic expenses. This is not retirement planning. This is to cover basic rent, food, utilities. It requires over $100,000 a year for a family. That means if you're working a minimum wage job, which many of those jobs are, you would need 3 full-time jobs in order to not plan for tomorrow, just to survive this month.
To pay your rent, not food.
It's such a great question. I almost think it's a philosophical one. I think we as a community have to decide, do we want to be perceived a certain way? And there's some goodies associated with that perception. Or do we want to be a certain way? And I really do believe that we are only as strong as our weakest member. And so maybe the conversation is about, it is inherent to all of us to see the folks falling through the cracks, because that is us communally. And I think the goodies we get from the perception, or that we're the, Orange County Coast, or we're
Disneyland.
Or Disneyland, or the happiest place on earth. Again, there are goodies that are associated with that. But when crisis comes, the floor falls out from everybody. And we take care of our neighbors. And wouldn't it be better if there was a safety net in place? So I think it's a philosophical conversation. You put your money where your values are.
Yeah.
And so what do we value?
And if I could just add pragmatically, every one of us would love to give you a tour so that you could, see it, feel it, learn about it, and then we could have a conversation. I know being in this sector for the last 5 years, it's been really challenging talking about the need for ending homelessness in our community, and I never would have thought that. But it's been really challenging in the best of ways, because it has really made me understand my statistics, right? Because I remember my 3rd day on the job, an elected politician asked me, is it true, what did he ask me? It was a mayor. I won't say the city, it wasn't our city. But it was a mayor that said, is it true that, I think he said all of the homeless people here in Orange County just come in because it's nice to be homeless and get sunshine. Like, that's basically what he said. And it's my 3rd day, and I'm very much a data person. I'm an evidence-based person, right? So I didn't know what the evidence supported, but say for our sector specifically, there are homeless surveys and reports done that not LA, not San Diego, just Orange County. And so I was Googling, because I was training myself, frankly, and I was on Googling, and I realized that Dr. Snow out of UCI does this amazing survey just of Orange County, and that was a survey question. And they realized by interviewing thousands of people who experience homelessness right here in Orange County that the overwhelming majority, I think it was like 90-something%, of people to experience homelessness in our community are right here. They were born here, they were raised here, they went to high school here, they work here, right? And so I think that was my 3rd day, and I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed, I don't know that, I should know that. And so as I educated myself, I learned so many new things. And so I think to be an advocate, if there's a mission that you're really passionate about, I'm sure you're like me, where you're like, well, I want to know maybe some more information about this, right? And I think whether it's nutrition and hunger, or employment, incubation, nonprofit, housing, and homeless service providers, like, because it is our mission to be accountable to the community and have great impact and outcomes, we know, not only can you come tour and see it and feel it for yourself, but there's a lot of data that we could share with you. And I know, like, for me, our shelter is really impactful because in 2019 we opened our doors to domestic animals. I did that based on data that I found in the county, that I thought, oh my gosh. And I now have a 3-year-old dog, and I swear he's like my human child. Someone has to remind me that he's a pet and not an actual baby. But I had never had a dog before, so I didn't get it. And it's okay to say that. But my first week as WISEPlace, as I was going around and introducing myself, there was a woman named Diana, and she had a golden retriever. And she stayed on the streets for 2 years longer than she needed to, because there was no shelter who allowed her to come and bring their domestic animal. So, I don't think it's all of us that have to educate ourselves on all the issues. But the beauty of our positions is that we can give you a tour, and we would love to have those conversations with you. And we don't always have to agree on things. I think that's the beauty. I think the beauty is in the conversation. And if we can find alignment, then wonderful, right? I think all of our minds expand and our hearts expand.
We're really fun at cocktail parties.
Believe it or not.
I have a question about your thoughts on economic policy. For example, do you support like raising minimum wage here in Orange County in the state? Or another example would be making it easier to build more housing in Orange County. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think you really tapped into my opinion about this, which is that if you can't afford to to live in the place that you work, that's the next problem to solve. I think that's the opinion I have about that.
Yeah. You're paying for it one way or the other. You're paying for it through nonprofits,
Yeah.
or you're paying for it through wages. So any policy that raises the bar on the standard of living and the strength of a community, I am for. I don't know. Could be very varied.
Yeah, no, I always say as nonprofits, we're nonpartisan, and any government relation activities that we do have to be in support of our mission, but raising the minimum wage, making housing more affordable would help people afford food. So because it supports our mission, and that's how I can say it, when I'm not the food bank CEO, I absolutely support it.
Do you think that businesses sometimes use nonprofit services as like subsidies so that they don't have to ensure their employees can live where they work? Or do you think that's not an employer's responsibility?
I think that's probably something I can't really answer.
Oh.
It's definitely part of the ecosystem, right?
Oh, I'm totally not trying to put you on the spot.
Oh no, we like politics.
Philosophically.
Are you saying that if you keep the wages low, but you know that there's food programs for your staff to go to, win-win? Are you saying that there's an intentionality about
I
it?
could imagine that would be a tough decision to be aware of if you were
I just
an
think it's
executive.
bad business. I just think it's bad business.
But as the people that are creating these services like that are for bare minimum like quality of life, right? Like having shelter and food, you are part of that dynamic. And so I just more personally was wondering where you land on that.
I feel like we're we're in a relationship, right? And maybe not all the parts of the relationship are healthy, but we're in it. And the healthy parts of the relationship are that we co-support each other, right? So businesses can hire our clients, they can train our clients, they can walk their corporate values, which is not their bottom line, through nonprofits. And that's the healthy parts of our relationship.
And the other parts we're in therapy for.
Or you're helping to make them better, and I think see the hope you provide, and I think that's in the right direction.
All right. And any closing thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to let you ladies go. It's been amazing hearing.
Thank you
your
for wanting to
stories.
know.
Thank you.
Thank you for wanting to know.
I'm feeling the same way. I'm really in awe of the fact that you have chosen to spend 9 months learning and doing that in a community that didn't exist prior to you coming to the table together to have that experience, which says a lot to me about who you are as humans. So I want to know you more. And as Brateil said, please, I hope this is just an opening act that we can be further in relationship with each of you, with each of our organizations and us, because you are the change makers. We are each taking ourselves and offering our gifts in the world in a way that makes it better. And how much more awesome is that to do in healthy relationships?
And I will add that the contact information is on the last page of the agenda, so if you would like to reach out, you have their contact information. But,
And if you want to start a nonprofit, call me, or Bonnie will talk you out of it.
And I think part of the reason, you're part of the reason, your intellectual curiosity, your generosity of time with each other and with us and here is part of the reason that the sun shines differently in Orange.
Amen. Amen.
We've got problems, but we're a good place. We're
Yes.
a good place. Thank
Yeah.
you guys.